Former Miami Dolphins offensive tackle Terron Armstead spending time this week on Good Morning Football, and he talked a little bit about Tua Tagovailoa's next frontier. We're getting into that here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, and the NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. Want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it. We live it here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Welcome to the Tuesday, June 24th edition of Locked On Dolphins. And we're going to get a little bit into the next frontier for Tua Tagovailoa, which is, I think, a really interesting opportunity for us to explore what one of his former Pro Bowl All-Pro teammates thinks is the next frontier for Tua as a quarterback. And obviously, Tua is a super polarizing player, and there's people that are Dolphins fans that believe unequivocally that Tua needs a better offensive line in front of him, and you could do anything that you want to do. And then there's Dolphins fans who believe Tua Tagovailoa is a capped player with a limited ceiling that, is only going to be able to take you so far. And the truth, as always, is a little bit more ambiguous than that. There's not necessarily a black and a white and a binary with this. There's lots of shades of gray as it pertains to quarterback play, building an NFL offense, building a winning franchise, all of that. But the numbers don't lie. So I want to start with what Terron Armstead said, and then I want to get into some numbers that were surprising to me when I put the filters on to kind of look at some of the things that maybe could be applied to what Terron Armstead said is the next frontier for Tua Tagovailoa. And then numbers at times, numbers in film don't often lie if you combine them together, but random websites on the internet do. And there was an all-time lie that I got to get a little something off my chest here at the end of today's show. But I want to start with this quote from Terron Armstead. He doubled down on Good Morning Football about his comparison from Tua and Drew Brees and their skill sets. And people on this channel have said, who cares what Terron thinks? He's crazy if he thinks, or Terron's Tua's friend, so can't take anything he says seriously about comparing him to Drew Brees. Or the TNA club for quarterback fans across football media saw the comparison that NFL Live put up of Tua and Drew Brees and rolled their eyes. It's like, well, Terron Armstead said it. Nobody else said it. Terron Armstead said it. He doubled down on it on Good Morning Football. He said, I've seen it in close proximity. I've seen his preparation. We've seen him collectively as football fans. We've seen him improve since his rookie year till now. He led the league in passing a couple years ago. He leads the league in completion percentage every year. Those are winning stats. And I even think more this year, he takes another step in his leadership. He takes another step in the fourth quarter, 2-minute drill, those late game situations that really separate the good from the great. I think it's time. And this is where it does get really interesting because, you have the opportunity with some of the media tools that are available to put filters on like regular and postseason games, fourth quarter and overtime, score deficit of -1 to -8 points, so a one-score game over the last 3 seasons, plays that happened within the final 5 minutes of regulation. I got the numbers, and I looked at them. And I will say it's a great place to point out for where Tua Tagovailoa needs to be better to be the kind of player that is a championship-capable quarterback in 2025 and the years ahead for however long he serves as the starting quarterback of the Miami Dolphins. I can tell you this. Since 2022, when Mike McDaniel became the head coach of this football team, Tua Tagovailoa has had 49 dropbacks in those exact circumstances. It's the final 5 minutes of regulation plus overtime. It's -1 to -8 point differential. So you're losing by one score on the scoreboard. Overtime in fourth quarter. Obviously, overtime, it gets a little muddy where like somebody has to kick a field goal and then you get possession because it can't only end on the first possession and a touchdown. Regular season and postseason games, last 3 years. The amount of dropbacks that Tua has in those game situations ranks tied for 20th in the NFL with 49 dropbacks. Some of these quarterbacks, there's 4 quarterbacks in the NFL over the past 3 seasons that have triple-digit dropbacks. In those circumstances, final 5 minutes plus overtime, losing by one score. Derek Carr, 120, Kyler Murray, 104, Geno Smith, 101, Kirk Cousins, 100. And Trevor Lawrence rounds out the top 5 with 99. Only one other quarterback, Russell Wilson, over 85. So Tua, not too consistently exposed to this circumstance. It ranks 20th in the NFL, and there's a total of 49 total quarterbacks in the NFL that qualify to have enough pass attempts to be qualified on this list. So Tua's in the middle of the pack as far as how often he is exposed to these circumstances. He's completing 54% of his passes. He averages 4.8 yards per attempt. That is a meager number out of these 49 quarterbacks. Tua ranks 45th on yards per attempt, 4.8. He's thrown 3 touchdowns and thrown 3 interceptions in this exact scenario. He has a passer rating of 64.6. That is, in and of itself, not good enough numbers. But what gets really surprising to me is when you look at some of his colleagues and how they perform in the same situations, because in the last 3 years, the Dolphins have won in which Tua has taken snaps in those situations. The Dolphins have won 5 games. Now, they have lost 8 of those games, but they've won 5. It was Baltimore in 2022. It was the Jets game this past year in 2024. And then in 2023, it was the Cowboys game. It was also the Jaguars game in 2024. And then the Chargers game. So 1 game in 22, Baltimore comeback. 2 in 2023. That was Chargers week 1, and then Cowboys to clinch a playoff berth at home. And then in 2024, it was Jacksonville week 1, and then the Jets overtime game, the first game we played against the Jets. Now, there's been some other opportunities that got away from us. We're going to get into those, and then how some of his colleagues perform in similar situations. That's next here on Locked On Dolphins. Stick with us. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, high-stakes soccer, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. If you're already following the action, so why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned on the beach. You can use FanDuel to track all of your favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet all summer long. I personally like taking a look at some of the futures, and the AFC East futures right now currently sit with the Dolphins the 3rd best odds, and pretty favorable odds if you think the Dolphins are going to win this division. Plus 700 to win the AFC East. Bills favored at minus 250, but Dolphins at plus 700. If that tickles your fancy, you think the Dolphins can have the breakthrough in the East this year, have at it. And right now, if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Games that the Dolphins had this exact circumstance. Snaps taken in the final 5 minutes, losing by 1 to 8 points on the scoreboard, regular season or playoff games. Houston, Tua had 2 cracks at it through 2 picks. We obviously had the interception with Derek Stingley. Actually, we had 1 pick because we had the catastrophic sack from Jackson Carman. on the first possession. So Tua had the interception against Derek Stingley in the Houston game on the road with the Dolphins down 8 points. And then they had the Jets game, which they successfully had to come back in. And then in the week 9 matchup, the Dolphins successfully came back and tied the game against the Bills on the road with the Tua Tagovailoa touchdown pass to Jalen Waddle, and then had one play with 5 seconds left that was not a successful comeback win. But they did go down the field and tie the game. That was the only other time with Tua on the field going back to the week 1 game in Jacksonville where they successfully walked it off. You go back to 24, the week 18 game against Buffalo, Dolphins down 7 points. Dolphins take over on their own 37 with 153 left in the game. Chance to tie. Whatever happened with Chase Claypool happened. Game over. Dolphins have the comeback win against Dallas at home. That drive started. Tua's first pass attempts came with 3:19 left in the fourth quarter. Dolphins down 20-19. Dolphins won that football game. The game, which will not be named, on Monday night against an AFC South opponent, with the Dolphins leading by 14 with 3 minutes left in the game. All-time collapse. The Germany game against Kansas City was Dolphins had a 1st and 10 at the Kansas City 31, down 7 points, 1:17 left, and had the misconnect with Cedric Wilson on that possession that could have tied the game. And that was the last one in 23 before they come back in week 1, where Tua steps up in the pocket and hits the pass to Hill on 3rd and 10 with 3.5 minutes left in the game, throws the dart on 3rd and 4 to Tyreek Hill to take the lead. Games in 2022, which the Dolphins also had this opportunity, was Green Bay, Christmas Day game, Tua's second concussion game, and then the Baltimore comeback win that the Dolphins had, where Tua's first pass attempt came with 2:12 left in the fourth quarter with Baltimore up 38-35. So that's the opportunities that Tua Tagovailoa has situationally had during the Mike McDaniel era. His win percentage is not great, but there are quarterbacks who have similar or more pass attempts that I was very surprised to see ranked worse than Tua in the same circumstances. So Tua, as a reminder, completing 54% of his passes, a paltry 4.8 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, pass rating of 64.6. That ranks right in the middle of the pack, if we're being honest. If you list it by passer rating, the name right below Tua Tagovailoa over the past 3 years is Aaron Rodgers, who completes 53% of his passes, 6.2 per pass attempt, 2 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, pass rating of 63.1. Has had the same number of game opportunities that Tua has had, one less game in those circumstances than Tua Tagovailoa. Aaron Rodgers. Patrick Mahomes has the same number of wins, 5, as Tua does in games in which this game circumstance plays itself out. Pat completes 51.6% of his passes, has less yards per attempt, 4.7, than Tua does at 4.8, has 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, and a passer rating of 62.2 Patrick Mahomes has in fourth quarter and overtime of games in which you're trailing by -1 to -8 points since 2022 in the final 5 minutes of regulation and overtime. Surprised to see Patrick Mahomes' name down here. Trevor Lawrence, passer rating of 58.6 in these circumstances, 3 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, completes 48% of his pass attempts. Jordan Love has 4 wins and 16 opportunities in these games, completing 46% of his pass attempts, 3 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, pass rating of 52.5. Brock Purdy has 1 win in 10 attempts in these situations, 25 pass attempts, 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, pass rating of 37.5. And Jalen Hurts has had 10 opportunities. He's won 3 out of 10 opportunities. He completes 50% of his pass attempts in these circumstances, 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, passer rating of 26. So this is not to excuse that this needs to be better, because some of the names at the top of this list, CJ Stroud, passer rating of 126 on 40 dropbacks in these circumstances. Matt Ryan, Tom Brady, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, Geno Smith. These are all the quarterbacks with a passer rating of at least 100 or better in the final 5 minutes of regulation plus overtime, losing by 1 score on the scoreboard since the start of 2022 in the fourth quarter. Josh Allen, passer rating of 91. Baker Mayfield, pass rating of 92. I'm rounding up, 91.9. Jared Goff, 79.9. Matthew Stafford, 75.4. Justin Herbert, 68.5. Caleb Williams, 65.1. Tua is sitting at 64.6. So there's some names that you would expect to be at the top of this list. Stroud, Brady, Burrow, Jackson. Ironically enough, Burrow has an incredible passer rating in these situations, and he has 1 win in games in which they had this exact circumstance. So some tough love for Joe Burrow in these circumstances. Double-digit losses, 1 win, but a passer rating of 108 in those opportunities. Final 5 minutes of regulation and overtime in the fourth quarter since 2022 while losing by 1 score. Tua Tagovailoa ranks the middle of the pack. It needs to be better. There's no question. But I was surprised to look at and see names ranked below Tua in passer rating, and in some cases, yards per attempt, like Mahomes, Kyler Murray, Trevor Lawrence, Kirk Cousins, Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, Jalen Hurts. So it is admittedly a tough game situation to have to execute in. And it is one of those things for Tua specifically. There is a growth potential that is there and is present. That if you want to be the player that people think you can be, the performance in these situations, I'm not saying you have to have a passer rating of 126 like CJ Stroud does on 40 dropbacks. But we got to find it in those moments more consistently. I don't think there's any doubt there. And I think Terron Armstead's onto something as far as that being the next frontier for Tua Tagovailoa. Now, speaking of former NFL Miami Dolphins offensive tackles, we'll talk about this Kendall Lamm snafu that maybe you've seen a little bit of on social media in the last couple of days. That's next. Stick with us. If you don't know what I'm going to talk about, then bless you, and I hope this is the only thing that you hear about it, because Kendall Lamm allegedly had over the weekend a quote from what I'll spoil it. It's a fake article. Kendall Lamm never said it. Now the fake quote in the fake article attributed Kendall Lamm telling ESPN a whole bunch of slanderous things about the Dolphins culture, and he sees why the Eagles have won, been to 2 Super Bowls in 3 years because nobody's toxic and everybody's on time and everybody talks about their personal trials to stay mentally sharp. And when I first saw it, I didn't really think much of it other than, well, the Dolphins knew they had a culture problem. And they've taken steps to try to address it this offseason, and we got to wait and see what happens and if they fix it. But then as this story became bigger and more aggregators picked up on it, put it on quote graphics, and then there started being aggregation stories that were written about this quote from Kendall Lamm. Kendall Lamm pops on Instagram and is like, people keep sending me this quote from this story. I never said this. I never said any of this. I really enjoyed my time in Miami. I'm kind of mind my own business guy. I'm not that kind of guy. And then you go digging and you find the website with air quotes that this existed and manifested from. And some of the other stories that exist on this website are Breece Hall being traded to the Chiefs a month ago. Larry Ogunjobi, formerly the Steelers, who signed with the Bills, saying everybody wants to get out of there. It's a disaster, is a quote that Ogunjobi was attributed to for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And obviously was never said. Jameson Williams was traded in another story because very apparent very quickly, this is not a legitimate source of aggregation or news. So whether it's AI or whether it's blatantly lying and making things up to try to get impressions. In the Kendall Lamm case, it worked. And it's really unfortunate because it really got amplified across a lot of voices that fans trust to give them the news and the 411 about the Dolphins. And I just wanted to touch on it to make sure that Dolphins fans, if you saw this quote from Kendall Lamm and you felt it was just kicking you while you were down. And I feel some type of way about it because, like, I got to know Kendall Lamm a little bit during my time at training camp and getting to talk with him and seeing how he went about his business, seeing what he did to play for the Dolphins with the bulging disc in his back that at times had him immobile for half of his body. And laying it out there on the field the way that he did and being the consummate professional that he was, I feel some type of way that somebody would make a story up about Kendall Lamm for the sake of impressions. And, you don't got to give the impressions back. You don't get to give the dopamine back for your phone blowing up. But I felt some type of way that Kendall Lamm had this quote, slanderous quote made up in his name. And then he's got to take time to hop on Instagram and post a story and be like, I didn't say this. I don't know where this is from. Right. And all of the corrections for those who shared it are getting 1/10 or fewer of the impressions of the original shares of the quote that was never actually said in the first place. There's a whole bunch of Dolphins fans that are pissed off at Kendall Lamm for something he never even said. So this is the time of year, especially when the news gets slow and you're desperate for content. Slow down. Do your due diligence. Fanhub.clubx.biz or whatever the website was. They presented it with fake hyperlinks back to source, like there would be a linked quote with a linked story that has the quote. Slow down. Find your personalities that give you the tone that you like about the Dolphins, and it doesn't have to be me. But whatever you hear, just slow down, do a little due diligence, because, man, this thing grew legs like crazy, like you would not believe. And all kinds of opinions about the Dolphins and Kendall. And the Dolphins knew they had a culture problem. We don't need to make up quotes for guys that left to affirm what we already knew. Yet that's what happened. And if you got a platform, be careful. Keep your head on a swivel. That's going to do it for us here on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. Appreciate you guys as always for checking the show. Make it a great rest of your Tuesday. I will be back again tomorrow unless we get some breaking news tonight, in which case you'll be hearing from me later, and you never know. So keep it locked in right here at Locked On Dolphins.